Renting my first apartment was the first step toward moving out of my parents' house. Moving out on my own was exciting at first, but it soon became a terrifying experience for me. As a young adult lady, I realized that I have to learn to safeguard myself at all times. I was watching Netflix on my smart TV when I heard a series of loud knocks on the door. I wondered who it was since I was not expecting a visitor that night. Neither did I order food nor any parcel, so I also got annoyed as I did not want to get disturbed since it was my movie night and my food was ready. The loud knocks were repeated, which prompted me to go near the main door. It was like someone was rushing me to open the door. I looked through the door hole and saw a man dressed in a hooded jacket. It had been pouring that night, and I noticed the man was drenched. Couldn't interpret the hand signs he made. He must be mute, but I could not tell. Since the rain had been intense earlier, it appeared that he was requesting assistance. I asked the man what he needed and he gestured for me to open the door. Strong gusts rustled the trees outside. He signed telling me that it was chilly outside. I told myself that this man might need help, but because I was alone and it was late, I did not open the door. I've seen several scary movies in which strangers attack ladies in this same scenario. I'm not going to allow it to happen to me. I also started thinking that he wasn't alone and was just playing tricks on me. Who knows, maybe the hand signals are for his companions who are hiding from my view. I also remembered that my parents also advised me not to entertain strangers when I was alone in the apartment. I decided to ignore him while telling him that I'm sorry, but I can't help him one last time. I went back in front of the TV thinking that he may just leave if I ignored him. When he knocked again, I told him to please ask for help from another house in the neighborhood. My apartment had only a few neighbors. This kept the neighborhood silent at night. This was one of the reasons I chose the location, since I wanted a quiet area to study and research, because I also wanted to enroll in postgraduate studies. The man stopped knocking and I was able to continue watching a newly released movie. Unfortunately, my internet connection suddenly dropped. I stood up and checked my Wi-Fi modem and saw that the internet light was off. I also overheard that the battery backup unit of my fiber box was beeping. I just turned off the TV. I was also surprised that my landline had no dial tone when I tried to make a phone call. I became suspicious that someone intentionally cut the lines in the terminal box outside my apartment. I became worried. This could be their tactic for me not to be able to get help from others. Then the power went out. The sound of my air conditioner ceased. I was not sure if it was a power outage in the whole area, so I approached the window to open it. When I opened the window blinders and peeked at the window, I saw the man with a hood standing just right next to the window. I was startled by this, so I quickly withdrew back from the window. I shouted that I would call the cops. The man simply stood there, staring at me with an odd grin. He may not have comprehended what I said, but I made it clear that I was furious. My brain was freaking out. The darkness covered the man's face, so I cannot see it, although the flashes of lightning helped me see that he was bald, and had a tattoo over the side of his head down to his neck, which I could only partly see. I saw another shadow through the window. Then, I heard footsteps running towards the apartment's other side. I'm now positive that he was not alone. Suddenly, I heard the kitchen window glass shattered. I panicked. I glanced at my neighbors, hoping that the noise of the window glass shattering caught their attention, but there's no reaction from my neighbors. I also noticed that there was power in the closest neighboring house, so I know that I am the only one affected by the power outage. I cowered down to hide and looked for my phone. I know I needed immediate help. My heart was beating fast when I grabbed my phone and called 911. My fingers were shaking, but I was able to report the incident. I raised my voice to let the intruders know that I am asking for help. I checked the sliding window in the kitchen and confirmed that it was opened. It seemed like my heart stopped beating, but in reality, my heart was racing. I was expecting that a man would grab me any moment now. I cringed at the thought that I may be killed that night by someone stabbing me or by gunshot. I was in this thought when I heard footsteps approaching me. I ran around the side of my house in the opposite direction. What was I supposed to do? There was no time to consider anything. I got to my front door, swung it open, hurried outside, and slammed it shut. I panicked and kept running away from the apartment. The night was so quiet that I could hear my footsteps and even my heartbeat. I stopped when Elle reached the next house. I knocked their door loudly. I stood at their front door almost hyperventilating as I kept looking back at my house. I was expecting to see someone following me or exiting the place, but I did not see anyone. This comforted me a bit. The sky was lit up by lightning, which illuminated the murky atmosphere. Then there was a massive downpour. Strong winds accompanied the rain. I've always been afraid of lightning and thunder, but what was happening in my apartment horrified me much more. I thought to myself that the assailants probably still looking for me or my money and other belongings. After double-checking that it was me, my neighbors answered the door. Before I could even tell them what had occurred to me, the couple welcomed me into their home. I was very wet and trembling with fear. They gave me a towel and some clothes to change into. I was grateful that they recognized me as their new neighbor and offered help. Soon the police came but were not able to catch the robbers that night. The heavy rain caused them some delay. It was perfect timing for the robbers since I was alone and the weather was bad that night. When I went back to my apartment, my jewelry was gone, including my laptop and some cash. The CCTV footage was unable to identify the burglars because they wore face masks and had their heads covered with hoods. I was asked to go to the precinct for my statement. They asked me to describe the man in the hoodie. My anxiety, however, has obscured my memory of his physical look. All I could remember was that there was a bald man with tattoos on the head wearing a black jacket with a hood and with another one or two whom I was not able to see. The case has not been resolved up to now. The terrifying experience caused me to move back to my parents' house. The majority of people would feel safer if a police officer lived in their apartment building. This wasn't the case with the people in my apartment though. The police officer moved into the same apartment after a week when I moved in. He was never pleasant to deal with. My first impression of him was correct. He was rude and arrogant. Indeed. He soon began harassing our peaceful neighborhood. The cop is tall and muscular, but he has a terrible personality. He had a bad habit of drinking beer and maxing out the volume of his TV even during late hours of the night. A few of our neighbors had complained about him, but the security officer seemed to be afraid of him. One of my neighbors said that he already has an eviction notice and was given a few days to leave the apartment. Unfortunately, the eviction was recalled when he threatened the apartment management with violence. He might be single as he lived alone. Whenever he passes by our shared entrance, he always looks at me menacingly. This prompted me to always close my front door. Unfortunately, he lived just one door away from me. All that separates us is a migrant family that has small kids. I pity the terror that they have to go through living with this kind of man. I moved to these 2 floors of the apartment to get away from my mother's toxic surroundings. Her boyfriend irritated me beyond belief, so I relocated. I did not expect that my new apartment will be this hellish, thanks to this police officer. I saw the cop's horrible behavior firsthand. When his next-door neighbor's infant was crying loudly, he hurled an egg through their window. It was the unit of Miss Cruz, who was one of the old tenants in the apartment. When the cop caught me looking at him and witnessed what he did, he stared at me without blinking for what felt like a minute. I was forced to look down the floor. I returned to my flat trembling with fear. I heard our next-door neighbor open their door. They were probably checking who pelted the egg on their window. I did not bother to tell them anything since I was afraid of the cop. I just heard the cop shouting at them and throwing a trash bin in front of their door. This was followed by the sound of the kids crying. Miss Cruz immediately closed their door, but the cop kept shouting. Now, this cop has been bullying everyone in this apartment, but he is particularly targeting this migrant family. I heard someone mention before that the husband of Miss Cruz is working outside the city, and was only coming home once or twice a month. So he probably has no idea of the terror that his family is being subjected to. Also, I was concerned for the husband's safety if he found out and tried to confront the cop. I'm sure the family will suffer as a result of this. One day, I heard that Miss Cruz came out of their unit, and when I looked out the window, she put her crying baby in a stroller in the hallway. She pushed the stroller trying to calm down her child. The baby kept on crying, so she took him and brought him back inside their unit, leaving the baby stroller outside. The cop went out of the unit with a bottle of beer in his hand. When he collided with the baby stroller left in our shared foyer, everything spiraled out of hand. He was furious and kicked the stroller, which hit the wall and fell to the floor. He also threw the bottle to the floor and it shattered. He went back into his apartment and took his gun and threatened Miss Cruz. When he noticed that a lot of people saw him do that, including me, he spat profanities and racial slurs at us, prompting us to shut our doors and windows. He slammed his door when he entered his unit and maxed out the volume of his TV. I called the security officer in the intercom unit of the apartment building, but I was told that I was not the only one who reported it. I felt that our complaints had been ignored. The family left the apartment the next day. No one had the nerve to confront the cop. Maybe they were afraid of him having a service firearm. Or maybe he was too terrifying to confront. Few days later, at around midnight, I woke up to the sound of heavy breathing outside the door of my apartment. I remained silent to listen closely. I heard my doorknob jerking slowly, as if someone is trying to open the door. "Who's there?" I asked in a slightly garbled voice due to fear. "Please go away. I'll call the police." I tried hard to mask my fear in my voice. The doorknob stopped moving for a few seconds. The heavy knocking came after. I immediately dialed 911. I raised my voice a little bit, so that whoever is outside the door will know that police are on the way. It worked. The knocking stopped. I know that it's only that cop who would be brazen to attempt something like this. I don't have any evidence though. Technically, even if I have, knocking on the door isn't exactly illegal. So when the cops arrived, they just took my statement. I told them that someone tried to open my door, but I have no idea who. The cop became outright hostile at me after this incident. I would see him stalk me when I'm outside of the apartment. I decided to install a hidden CCTV in front of my unit. One weekend, the cop is drunk again and is ranting about how I called the police on him. He's wasted that he probably said things that he should not have said. What unnerved me is that he told me that he was not done with me yet, and that he'll get his revenge. After hearing those things, I seriously contemplated going back to my mom's place. He began throwing things at my front door. He banged on my door to make sure that I was listening. I was shaking in fear. One of our lady neighbors, Miss Smith, probably got enough courage to pacify him. She implored him to calm down. But he became even more enraged. He shoved the old lady, which fell to the floor. I immediately rushed toward the old lady to help her up. The cop noticed that everyone was looking at him. He immediately toned down and went inside his flat. I went to bed believing that the nightmarish incident was over, but I was wrong. I woke up to the sound of banging noise outside my flat. I sat on the bed, trying hard to wake myself up because I'm still too sleepy. I was about to open my night lamp when I heard footsteps coming from my front window. I thought someone just woke up early and was passing by the walkway, but when the footsteps stopped directly outside my window, I already knew that something bad was about to happen. I rushed to my computer table and opened my laptop to check the CCTV live feed. I gasped when I saw the cop outside my window carrying what appears to be 2 cans of gasoline. He tried to open my doorknob. When he realized that the door was bolted shut, he went back to the window. Since he tried to open my door, I picked up my phone and called 911. I kept it quiet this time so as not to provoke the cop. I was hoping that he'll just stop and go back to his flat. I almost fainted with what he did next. He put both cans of gasoline on the floor and elbowed the glass of my window. The hallway was filled with the sound of shattering glass. "Please stop. Please," I pleaded with him. His expression was filled with delight when he saw me crying. "Open the door," he yelled at me. "Open the stupid door." He tried to grab the doorknob from the window. "Anyone, please help," I pleaded to our neighbors. I said open the door. He punched the remaining glass in the window. When his hand starts bleeding, he became more infuriated. He opened one of the gasoline cans and started pouring it inside from the window. He was very agitated. All I could do was cry. One by one, the lights from the other flats started opening. I saw the cop looked around. He already knew that he went too far. He then took one last glance at me and rushed to his flat. He was arrested a few minutes later. These events were reviewed in the CCTV footage of the apartment building as it made the local news. He was charged with multiple offenses including attempted arson, destruction of properties, aggravated assault, and cruelty to children. I rented a new apartment and had a better neighborhood until now. I prefer renting to owning a house since it's more convenient for me. If the area is unpleasant, I can leave at any time. I recently moved into a new apartment near my new job. I found a new job as a software engineer and I will be replacing a developer who made an unforgivable mistake of deleting 1-year payroll data of one of the clients of the firm. I met the guy on the first day and he turned over source codes and documentation to me. Throughout our meeting, he maintained an expressionless face. As a fellow programmer, I understand his feelings. He made a mistake and now he's losing his job for it. I know that his ego was bruised. Anyway, our turnover meeting was uneventful and I thought that that'll be the last time I'll see this guy. We are working from home setup, so I was mostly glued to my laptop the whole day. My room is on the 2nd floor. The apartment is a 2-floor landed house. It's just a small one that is perfect for a single girl like me. The kitchen and living area is on the 1st floor while the master's bedroom, which I occupy, and the guest room are on the 2nd floor. Everything was going well with the new job for a few days when I began noticing strange things happening. With each new day, I noticed that the source codes and documentation in the repository started to get deleted a few files at a time. I reported it immediately to my manager. Upon investigation, I found out that the developer that I replaced created a Windows service that would activate 6 days after he left. The Windows service would then start deleting a file every 6 hours. After eliminating this threat, the company sued the developer, which is now missing from his last known residence. I was surprised that the guy would do something crazy like that. It would ensure that his career as a software engineer would be over. No one would hire him after that. After a few days, I began noticing some of my things moving around. For example, I usually put my car keys inside my computer table drawer, but I'll see them on top of the bed or the floor sometimes. People in my profession sometimes suffer from our memories getting overridden by what we perceive as more important matters. So, I ignored these things and assumed that I might have inadvertently moved those things and forgotten about them. From time to time though, I would catch a silhouette in the corner of my eyes moving from one place to another behind me. I dismissed this as well and thought that being glued to the monitor for the whole time, my eyes must be playing tricks on my mind. Nonetheless, from time to time, I would check it out and there's always nothing there. These incidents disturbed me from my work, so I'm mostly annoyed rather than afraid. Then one night, I suddenly woke up when I heard footsteps outside the door of my room. I immediately sat up on my bed and opened the light on the table beside me. I listened closely, but the footsteps stopped. I debated if I would go to the door and check it out. Now, I'm a scrawny geeky guy. If there is someone dangerous out there, my best chance of survival is to stay put. However, my curiosity got the best of me. I slowly got up from the bed and walked towards the door. As I was about to grab the doorknob, there was a sudden successive loud knock on the door. I was so terrified that I froze, not knowing what to do. While I'm still processing everything, I hear the footsteps run toward the stairs. Whoever that was, he was fleeing fast. I quickly grabbed my cell phone and called the police. 2 officers arrived after 5 minutes. Then the operator told me to open the front door. I was hesitant at first because there is clearly an intruder in my house, and whoever it was, it could still be there. But later on, I finally gathered some courage to go out of my room and open the front door. The officers introduced themselves and inspected the house. They didn't find anyone, but they saw the back door was open. For a few days, they stationed an officer to watch my house. They also did frequent patrol runs. But after a week, they assured me that whoever is the intruder, he must have fled and would not bother me again. They advised me to change all the locks and strengthen my security. I wasted no time and did the advice of the police officers. I even installed CCTV cameras for good measure. Having all this released some of the tensions that I'm having. I felt relaxed. Perhaps I became too relaxed that I lowered my guard. One night, around 11 p.m., I was sitting at my table with only the reading lamp on. I was busy coding some program enhancements on one of our modules. That's when I heard someone knocking on my front door. I checked the CCTV monitor, but I did not see anyone there. Then suddenly, I hear the glass window on my back door shattering. The neighbor's dogs started barking aggressively. I know that the intruder is back, and this time he's making his presence known. I immediately made sure that my room door was locked and called the police. I hear a banging noise in the kitchen. It is as if the intruder is tossing things around. It didn't take long for the intruder to start banging on my door. He's demanding that I open the door. When I didn't respond, he started kicking it. I realized that my door is not as sturdy as it looks because it starts falling apart after a few kicks. So despite my whole body shaking in fear, I was forced to go to the door and push it against his force. I did vaguely notice the sound of the sirens on the police mobile because I'm too fixated on stopping the guy from breaking my door. I just realized that the officers were on him when I heard someone tackle him on the ground, followed by the officers telling him to stay down. I waited for a few minutes when the commotion died down. One of the officers knocked on my room door and assured me that it was okay to step out. I did as the officer instructed. There were 4 police officers this time. 2 of them were carrying the assailant. I caught a glimpse of the guy as they haul him out. It was the software developer that I replace. One of the officers told me that the guy confessed that he started stalking me after our meeting. On the day that he was apprehended, he was holding a knife when they tackled him. He intended to stab me once he got through the door.